Thank you for watching Better Business Bureau's 2020 Cybersecurity Program. Our next speaker is Dr. Ashley Podhradsky. She is the Associate Dean of the Beacom College of Computer and Cyber Sciences and Associate Professor of Digital Forensics at Dakota State University. Ashley is also a member of the First Bank and Trust Board of Directors. In addition to her academic and professional work, she has a strong passion for increasing gender diversity in cybersecurity. She is the co-founder of CyberHer, an initiative to increase gender diversity in cybersecurity. Ashley was the recipient of the MB 2017 Young Woman of Achievement, the 2017 Merrill Hunter Award for Excellence in Research, the 2017 and 2018 New American Cybersecurity Fellow, and is a 2019 American Association for the Advancement of Science, if/then ambassador. She lives in Madison, South Dakota with her husband, Nick, and 2 children, Chloe and Hudson. Ashley, take it away.
An honor to be here with all of you and share some tips on how to avoid phishing attacks and ways to protect yourself and your organizations. As mentioned, I am at Dakota State University, and my primary responsibilities here are research and directing our digital forensics for cyber enforcement lab. So our DigForCE lab is funded through, we're in our 3rd year, and we're funded through federal, state, and local resources. Our primary objectives are conducting digital forensic casework for the South Dakota Attorney General's Office in the Division of Criminal Investigations. We've conducted casework on everything from attempted murder to drugs to domestic violence. We've worked with federal partners in the FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and almost every local and regional agency in the state. Every single crime has a digital component. We aid the state in investigating digital devices. We have a brand new state-of-the-art facility here in Madison, the Madison Cyber Labs, as we call the MAD Labs. In addition to casework, we also do training for law enforcement. So we're part of the basic training academy that all law enforcement goes through. So when they see a digital device, how do they acquire it? How do they ensure the admissibility of the evidence that they see on it? In addition, we also do a lot of research. Universities, our strengths are research, so we bring that to the lab as well. We have several private contracts with international entities to conduct specific research. I can't go into detail on those, but our expertise is dark web investigations. Our team is led by 2 people, myself and Toby Russell. He is a special agent through DCI. He retains his role in DCI for his subpoena and search warrant power. And then Erica Colm is our cyber intelligence analyst at Dakota State. She handles the majority of our casework. And Katie Shook is another big part of our lab here on campus. As a note, if you think that you've been the victim of cybercrime, you need to report it. If you came home and saw that your garage door was broken into and you could see the door was open and you could see some pry bar marks, you would call the police. Because if you didn't, it might happen to your neighbor tomorrow. So whether or not you think that they can do anything, call them, because more stats, more reporting is what results in organizations like ourselves helping the state investigate these crimes. So in South Dakota, it's 1-800-300-1986 is a consumer protection. And then also call your local police departments or sheriff's office. So I'm here today to talk with you about phishing. You've undoubtedly seen the campaigns. The imagery is palpable. We know not to click, but sometimes we do. So I'm going to talk about different types of phishing, some you might not have thought about, and end with ways to protect yourself from those attacks. Prior to starting this lab at Dakota State, I did private casework for over a decade. So for businesses and individuals, civil, criminal, all across the country, I did probably over 100 private cases. And so the experience I'm bringing to this presentation is both from the civil side and also the criminal side. So we can't talk about phishing and not mention email, but I want to start with something new, which is smishing, we call it, SMS phishing. So Smishing it's a phishing attack through your text message on your phone. These scams try and trick you into clicking on a link in a message, but don't click. Simply ignore the message and then block it. Now, these messages are trying to elicit emotion. They want you to tell you, you have a late package, click on this link to get your updated delivery time. Or your credit card has been deactivated. Click here to reactivate. Someone left a negative review on your Yelp page. Click here to read it. Your bank has had a breach. Click here to see if your data was exposed. But don't fall for it. Don't click on it. What you can do is you can click ignore, and then you can block that number. It's best not even to say stop, because then they know that they've gotten through to you and now you're an active person. So don't click, don't say stop, just ignore and then block it on your phone so that way they can't connect with you. If you click it, what could happen is that you could give the attackers a front row seat to see all the data on your phone. So again, ignore and then block. Now here's one that we've seen quite often. The people who do these scams, they are ingenious, and if they use their intelligence to do something good, they could be successful business people like all of you on this call, but instead they're trying to get your money. So make sure that when you see things like this, they're trying to elicit an emotion, a reaction, give a sense of urgency, just ignore it. You're not going to get a COVID notification through your phone. You're going to be contacted by whatever state you're in, their Department of Health. So don't click on it. But, these attacks are timely, and they can fool most people into thinking that they are legit. Now, email is the most common communication for businesses. We probably all get way too much every day, probably have over 100 messages in and out every day, legitimate messages, more that it's just garbage. But with email being our primary communication for business, and it's where most of us spend our time together, especially now with remote work. So in addition to email, most people have social media accounts. And this graph here outlines the top social media email messages, the subjects of those that got people to click on phishing emails. Now, this is coming from an organization called KnowBe4. This is Q1 of 2020. So this is the newest report that they have on their website. KnowBe4 is a company that specializes in campaigns for phishing and testing and evaluating the security of your people's phones and the way that they're connecting through email. So they monitor if they click on a phishing email, and if they do, they give them some education. So these email messages were what their testing showed to be the most clicked on email subjects that are regarding social media. So you can see here on Twitter, it's a security update. Your password was successfully reset. Someone may have access to your account. Someone has sent you a direct message. There's a new voicemail, right? Your friend tagged you on a photo on Facebook. So login alert. What these are doing is they're trying to get you to click on it quickly without thinking. So, ask yourself, are they trying to get an immediate reaction? And what are they wanting me to do? If they want you to click on something, don't do it. Instead, if you think there is a concern with your LinkedIn account, go directly to LinkedIn through your browser and see if you can log in without issue. If you can, well, then you know that was a phishing email. Now, when it comes to general emails, so not about social media accounts, this slide here, the graph shows the top general email subjects. Again, note that passwords and security concerns are prevalent. Also, the subjects are attempting to elicit an emotional response. You have to act, and you have to act now. Your password needs to be changed. There's been a policy change. There's a revised vacation and sick time policy. We all want to know what we get time off for. Your email is being deactivated. You got to read this message from HR. So those things are very prevalent. So when people click on those password check requirements, when you get that email, just instead go out to that application. So if it was a password check for Microsoft Teams, go directly to Teams instead of clicking on the link. If it's coming from your bank, go to your bank website and see if you can log in. Those are the things that you have to be mindful of. Again, single-handedly, what I can say, the best approach here is to go directly to those services through your browser and see if there's an issue with your account. Those are good ways to remediate this. So the last two slides were on social media, email messages, and then just other email messages that were sent through the testing side of KnowBe4. This side is in the wild attacks, and these are ones that have been reported as phishing to KnowBe4. So we can see here, again, if you look at COVID, they know what they're doing. Those email attacks were up 600%. I see that continuing in the short and long term, unfortunately. And so when you look through this, IT, work from home, your VPN connection. Microsoft, your meeting will begin soon. HR, new employee stock purchase plan. Okay, so all of these things are trying to get your emotions, trying to get you to do something. So just make sure, during our busy day, it's so easy just to click and click and click. Well, it could be a phish. And so what happens is then you could infect your system and compromise the security of your organization. So just keep that in mind. So this is a Better Business Bureau session. So I can assume most of you are businesses. And you might not think that you're impacted because you're a small business. Wrong. That's not true. For over a decade, I've done private cases, and I can tell you, you are a target more so because you don't think you are. And I did a case a few years ago for an HVAC company, and what happened is they lost over $140,000 through a phishing campaign. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, but keep it as anonymous as I can. So what happened is an attacker gained access to that business's email account. And they, again, don't log on in random places over free Wi-Fi. Just don't do it because your passwords could be visible. So they got access to an email password. So they logged into the account. They went to the sent items. And from there, they clicked on sort by attachments. And they saw that the business, the comptroller for this entity, would email out invoices. So you're in the sent items, you say sort by has an attachment, and now you can see all of the people who owe that business money. The attacker simply went to the people that owed them the most money and reached out to them through that email account. This is business email compromise, clicked off with phishing, through that email account and said, we've had an issue with our bank account. Instead of sending us a check, please wire us the funds here. And so the other entity, again, another local entity, wired them over $140,000. And it was it was 6 weeks before they followed up on payment. We have that South Dakota nice. You don't want to be a pest about invoicing and money in and say, hey, where's the money? So they waited a while. And then the entity reached out again and said, we haven't received your payment. Is there something that you need? And the other entity said, well, yeah, we got your invoice and we submitted payment. And so the company I was working for, as their expert witness, went through and said, well, no, not quite. We never received it. And they went back and said, yeah, we wired it to the account you told us to. And then that's where the moment was of, wait a second, you wired us money? We didn't give you an account to wire us money. We don't accept money that way. Well, so what happened is you have entity A that did all of this work, entity B saying, yeah, you did great work. Entity A saying, here's what you owe us. We need $140,000. And entity B saying, okay, here's your $140,000. And so now you have both businesses agreeing that there is good work that needs to be paid, but that's where the everything ended, because entity B says, well, we paid. and entity A says, well, we didn't get paid. So by the time that I was brought in, working with the attorney, and I went through all of the systems to figure out what happened, they had a good resolution, but there was some litigation that was involved, which takes up time and expenses as well. But in situations like that, and looking at this slide, they would have fallen into the small business, absolutely. And fortunately, both businesses were solvent and could endure a $140,000 loss, but that hurts. So they agreed to split the difference. Entity B paid another $70,000. So they paid 1.5 times, and entity A only got half of what they were owed. So again, it's very unfortunate, but those are the things that we see, and they don't always go to law enforcement. They don't always report it, but there are so many anecdotes like that all across our region that I've been involved in. And in that situation, what could have stopped this entire thing is that they would have picked up the phone and called. When they got that email saying, hey, we've had some problems with our bank account, wire some money here. They could have picked up the phone and said, would you like us to wire the money to this account? So those are the biggest things. But yeah, that's a mess. So some of the current phishing attacks that we're seeing right now. One is account verification. And Bruce talked about this quite a bit with the CIA triad and authentication. So we want to make sure that when you get an email coming from an outside entity that says, like Netflix or someone that asks you to sign in and correct the issue with your account, don't click on it. Go to that application directly through your browser and see if there really is an issue. If you get a cloud file sharing request, so-and-so has shared you this file through Google Drive or Dropbox, click here. Don't do that. But those are the two big ones we're seeing. DocuSign, the biggest attack we're seeing with the DocuSign is that there's malware loaded attachments. So keep in mind that DocuSign doesn't actually send attachments with it. Fake invoices. This is a big one, especially with entities where they know that people work with each other. So maybe they get an invoice, they just send a fake invoice. But maybe it's one you're not expecting and it truly is malware. So, we've seen both sides of this. Again, the COVID alerts, this is something that is something we're going to continue to see, unfortunately, but just know that it needs to come through state DOH or your HR account or HR within your company. So delivery notification, that office equipment that you place an order that's late, you get the message to click here for your updated delivery date. Don't click it, even if it's timely. I did a case for a large healthcare organization in our region, the 4-state region, let's say, where the CIO of the company was waiting for a replacement hard drive for a server. And it was a well-crafted phishing email, and clicked on the link to see when the update was, when the hard drive was going to be coming, and it didn't come. Like it wasn't a legit email. Instead, it was a highly targeted spear phishing attack that resulted in some data loss. So I was doing the investigation on that, and my point with bringing up that anecdote is that none of us are immune. Bruce talked about some good tips and training. I know that Eric is going to talk about that as well. But we get so involved in our day-to-day. We're expected to do more with less, and we let our guard down a little bit. And so just make sure that you check everything through the original application. But, it can happen to all of us. When it does happen at your organization, the best thing you can do is just find a way to address it and not, dress down the person who did it, because we want them to come forward and say that, hey, I did something I shouldn't have. I know that now, but how do we fix it? Because the longer you can let malware run rampant in your organization, the harder it is going to be to clean up and the more impact it could potentially have. So what's the harm? What happens when you click? Let's look at some of the biggest attacks that have occurred. So here are the dirty dozen, the top 12 phishing attacks and what they have cost the companies that were attacked. So the first one I have, I'm just going to go over number one, and you can see the link down low to the reference. This is a fake invoice attack that occurred with Facebook and Google, and it happened for 3 years, 13, 14, and 15. And so they lost over $100 million. So, this happens quite a bit, unfortunately, but it does happen. And so that's something that you just have to be mindful of. Don't get hooked. And let's go through some tips to avoid phishing. Ask yourself, what do they want? What do they want me to do, and why? And are they eliciting emotion? Now check the links. You can hover on them and you can see if they go to the same URL. Don't click the links, go to the source. Don't open attachments. Check for improper spelling and grammar. And above all, when in doubt, pick up the phone, call and confirm. Our lab did some investigative work for lots of different school districts that get hit with this payroll diversion. And they get an email saying, hey, so-and-so is going to need to update their payroll to this bank account number. And so just make sure, so many of those have gone through and they could have been stopped instantly had they picked up the phone and called or walked down the hall. Not everyone is in person, but, pick up the phone and call or go to the application directly. Those two things can save your organization a tremendous amount of grief and expense. So I also have a couple of poll questions for you. So the first one is, phishing attacks come from, is it email, text message, messages on Facebook, or all of the above? Hey, it's kind of fun to watch all of these just roll in. We got over 36 of 53 right now. Everyone is saying all of the above. Hey, I missed my class today to teach, to be here. So I would say this is a win. I made some impact. All right, I'm going to end the polling there. And I'm going to go to polling question 4. If an employee emails you an updated payroll deposit form, you should make sure it's active for the next pay cycle. Make sure they don't miss their money. Email them back to make sure it's legitimate. Pick up the phone to call and confirm, or none of the above. I love this. Everyone has selected 100% pick up the phone to call. And I like Bruce brought this up as well, about emailing them back to make sure it's legit, because then we're emailing the hackers. So perfect. I'm going to call that a win. All right. Well, I am Ashley Podhradsky. Thank you for listening for me today.